The reality facing the Detroit Lions right now is that this offseason is not just important, it is defining, and everything begins with the offensive side of the ball. Dan Campbell himself made it clear when he spoke to the media that he has time and decisions to make regarding his coaching staff. And when you read between the lines, one conclusion becomes unavoidable. The Lions are preparing for a change at offensive coordinator. This is not framed as a possibility, but as a matter of timing. John Morton, as things stand, is expected to be moved on from as the play caller. That does not automatically mean he disappears from the building, because a demotion is still on the table, but the message is clear that the Lions will be looking for someone new to take control of the offense and call plays. That search, whenever it formally begins, will shape how this team looks in the next phase of its competitive window. This is why the conversation around potential offensive coordinator candidates matters so much. The Lions are not approaching a routine hire. They are navigating a massive offseason where the margin for error is small, expectations are high, and the offense cannot afford stagnation. Campbell acknowledged that he will take a few days to think things through, but the direction is already apparent. When the decision is made to remove Morton from the role of play caller, the Lions will need an experienced and trusted offensive mind to step in. That urgency is driving speculation, analysis, and debate across the fan base, because whoever takes this job will be tasked with maximizing the roster and putting the offense in position to win consistently. One of the names that naturally enters this discussion is Brian Daboll. His track record in the league spans decades, and while his time as head coach of the New York Giants ended with mixed results, his reputation was not built there. Daboll's strongest years came as offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, where he earned league-wide recognition for his work. His overall head coaching record with the Giants finished at 17-22-1, with his first season being the most successful before results declined. That context matters, because it shows both the upside and the questions surrounding him. What cannot be ignored is his extensive experience across multiple roles in the NFL, including tight ends coach, offensive coordinator, and head coach. When Daboll is at his best, particularly in an OC role, he has proven he can operate at a very high level. For a Lions team looking for someone who has already handled pressure and responsibility, that experience alone makes him relevant to the conversation. Another name that demands attention is Kevin Stefanski. His resume may be one of the most extensive among available offensive minds. Since 2006, Stefanski has worked his way through the league, serving in numerous offensive roles, and building a reputation as an offensive guru. His time as head coach of the Cleveland Browns complicates the evaluation, because Cleveland presents challenges that make it difficult to fairly judge any coach. Still, Stefanski's history as an offensive coordinator, particularly during his tenure with the Minnesota Vikings, stands out as a high point in his career. The complication for Detroit is that Stefanski is widely viewed as a strong candidate to land another head coaching job. Multiple openings already exist, and interest in him is real. That reality may make him an unlikely option, but the Lions cannot afford to ignore elite offensive minds simply because competition exists. If Detroit truly wants a former head coach with deep offensive experience, they would need to be aggressive, including financially. This is not unprecedented, as the organization has already shown.
A willingness to invest in coaching when it believes the return is worth it. The conversation then shifts toward a different type of candidate in Cliff Kingsbury. Recently let go as a coordinator by the Washington Commanders, Kingsbury is known for building offenses around mobile quarterbacks. His past includes being head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, where he fielded productive offenses, and he also had success with Washington before injuries disrupted consistency. Kingsbury is widely regarded as a sharp offensive mind, capable of designing systems that put quarterbacks and skilled players in favorable positions. The question with him is fit. His preference for dual-threat quarterbacks like Jayden Daniels and Kyler Murray raises doubts about how naturally his system would translate to Jared Goff. Still, past tendencies do not automatically define future adaptability. Kingsbury's intelligence and creativity on offense keep him in the discussion, even if he is considered one of the less likely options due to market demand and stylistic questions. What makes this entire situation compelling is that the Lions are not limited to outside hires. Familiarity and continuity could also play a role. J.T. Barrett, currently the quarterback's coach for the Chicago Bears, represents a different path. A former Ohio State quarterback, Barrett has been steadily climbing the coaching ladder and has direct ties to Detroit. He previously spent multiple years on the Lions staff and is familiar with the system, the building, and key figures such as Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, Mark Brunell, and Hank Fraley. According to league sources cited by Jonathan Jones of ESPN, Campbell is expected to be in the market for a new offensive coordinator, and Barrett is a name likely to receive OC interviews during this cycle. Hiring Barrett would signal a belief in internal knowledge, player development, and long-term growth rather than proven coordinator experience. It would be a calculated risk, but one rooted in familiarity and trust. All of these options reflect the crossroads the Lions are standing at right now. This is not simply about replacing a play caller. It is about defining the offensive identity moving forward and deciding whether experience, innovation, familiarity, or proven leadership matters most in this moment. With so many viable paths, the stakes could not be higher, and the decision will echo far beyond this offseason. How do you, as Lions fans, feel about the direction this offensive coordinator search is heading, and which type of candidate do you believe best fits where this team is right now? What often gets overlooked in this discussion is that the most logical option may already be inside the building. Hank Fraley is not a hypothetical name or a projection. He is a proven and respected coach who has already drawn interest from around the league. As the Lions' offensive line coach, Fraley has played a massive role in building one of the most consistent and physical units in football. His work has not gone unnoticed. Just last year, he interviewed for an offensive coordinator position with the Seattle Seahawks, which alone tells you how highly he is regarded outside of Detroit. Coaches do not get those opportunities by accident. They earn them through results, credibility, and the trust of players and front offices. Fraley represents a unique scenario for the Lions because his promotion would not require an adjustment period. He knows the personnel. He understands the locker room. He is deeply familiar with the offensive philosophy that Dan Campbell believes in. There is already a working relationship built on trust and accountability. If Campbell were to decide that he wants to take on play-calling duties himself, then an offensive coordinator who can handle structure, preparation, and game planning without calling plays becomes even more valuable. In that scenario, Fraley fits perfectly. He could manage the broader offensive operation while Campbell remains directly involved on game days. However, this path is not without its own risk. The Lions must consider whether Fraley even wants the offensive coordinator role. Turning down the Seattle opportunity suggests that he is selective and thoughtful about his career progression. There is also the concern of losing him altogether. If Detroit hesitates, another team could move quickly and lure him away, either as an offensive coordinator or potentially in another elevated role. That reality forces Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell into a delicate balancing act. They must weigh the value of continuity against the urgency of offensive improvement, all while protecting one of the most important coaches on the current staff. When you step back and look at the full picture, the Lions' options reflect different philosophies. Hiring a former head coach like Brian Daboll or Kevin Stefanski would signal a desire for immediate experience and proven leadership. Bringing in someone like Cliff Kingsbury would represent a bet on creativity and modern offensive concepts. Choosing J.T. Barrett would show confidence in development, familiarity, and long-term upside. Promoting Hank Fraley would be a commitment to internal growth, culture, and continuity. None of these paths are wrong, but each one sends a different message about where the Lions believe they are as a franchise. This is why the offensive coordinator decision feels heavier than most. The Lions are no longer a rebuilding team searching for direction. They are a team with expectations, pressure, and a standard to uphold. The offense cannot afford regression, and it must evolve in ways that align with the roster and the identity Campbell has built. Every candidate discussed brings strengths, weaknesses, and implications that go far beyond a single season. This is about sustainability, trust, and making sure the offense does not become the limiting factor in a critical window of contention. At the end of the day, the Lions do have options, and that in itself is a sign of progress. They are no longer desperate. They are deliberate. The next offensive coordinator, whether a new face or a familiar one, will be tasked with carrying real expectations and delivering results immediately. There's also an underlying tension in this situation that fans need to understand, and it revolves around timing. The Lions are not operating in a vacuum. As soon as it becomes official that a new offensive coordinator will be brought in, the competition begins. Other teams are searching for answers on offense as well, and several of the names connected to Detroit are also attractive elsewhere. That means the Lions cannot afford to move slowly once the internal decision is made. Every delay increases the risk of losing preferred candidates to other opportunities, especially those with prior head coaching experience or strong reputations as offensive architects. This is where Dan Campbell's leadership style becomes central to the story. Campbell has never been a coach who chases trends for the sake of optics. His decisions are rooted in trust, alignment, and fit within the culture he has built. That suggests the Lions will prioritize someone who understands physical football, accountability, and adaptability. Whoever takes this job must be able to command respect in the room, communicate clearly with Jared Goff, and collaborate effectively with the rest of the staff. This is not a one-man show. It is a system built on cohesion, and the offensive coordinator must enhance that rather than disrupt it. Another factor that cannot be ignored is flexibility. The NFL changes quickly, and defenses are constantly adjusting. The Lions need an offensive coordinator who can evolve week to week, not just rely on a single system or philosophy. That is why experience matters, but so does creativity. It is also why familiarity with Detroit's personnel could be a major advantage. Knowing what this offensive line does best, understanding Goff's strengths and limitations, and recognizing how to maximize the skilled players already on the roster are not small details. They are foundational to sustained success. This decision will also influence future coaching stability. A successful hire could keep the Lions competitive while minimizing staff turnover. A poor fit could lead to another change in a short time frame, disrupting continuity and momentum. That is the risk the front office must manage carefully. The Lions have worked too hard to build credibility to rush a decision or make one based solely on name recognition. What makes this moment so compelling is that it reflects how far the franchise has come. Years ago, conversations like this were filled with desperation and uncertainty. Now, they are driven by strategy and expectation. The Lions are choosing how to sharpen a contender, not how to survive another rebuild. That shift changes everything about how this hire should be evaluated. As this offseason unfolds, every move will be scrutinized, but none more closely than who ultimately takes control of the offense. The direction chosen will reveal how the Lions see themselves and what they believe is necessary to take the next step. One more layer that deserves attention is how this offensive coordinator decision ties directly into accountability at the very top. Dan Campbell has openly stated that he is evaluating everything, and that includes his own role and how the offense functions moving forward. If Campbell ultimately decides to take on a heavier hand in play design or situational decision-making, then the profile of the offensive coordinator changes dramatically. In that scenario, the Lions would not simply be hiring a play caller, but a stabilizer, an organizer, and a teacher who ensures weekly execution stays sharp. That possibility makes internal options like Hank Fraley even more relevant, because trust and alignment become non-negotiable. At the same time, the Lions cannot ignore the reality that NFL offenses are increasingly judged by adaptability under pressure. Late-game execution, red zone efficiency, and answers when the initial plan fails are areas where elite coordinators separate themselves. This is where someone with prior head coaching or long-term coordinator experience holds value. Coaches like Brian Daboll or Kevin Stefanski have lived through those moments. They have adjusted under fire, dealt with criticism, and learned from failure. That experience cannot be replicated overnight. For a Lions team that expects to be in meaningful games deep into the season, that background matters. What also stands out is that the Lions are not forced into a single identity choice. They can blend what they already do well with new ideas, but only if the coordinator is willing to collaborate rather than impose. That is a critical distinction. This offense does not need to be reinvented. It needs to be sharpened. The wrong hire would chase a system that does not fit the personnel. The right hire would amplify what already works while adding layers that defenses struggle to anticipate. That balance is exactly what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell must identify in interviews and internal discussions. There's also a human element to this decision that fans should not overlook. Players feel coaching changes immediately. Confidence, clarity, and communication can rise or fall based on who is in charge of the offense. The Lions have built a locker room that believes in itself, and any coordinator stepping into this role must enhance that belief rather than fracture it. This is why familiarity, leadership style, and teaching ability are just as important as scheme. The Lions are not chasing theoretical upside. They are protecting something real that already exists. As the offseason continues, this storyline will only grow louder. Every rumor, every interview request, and every report will be viewed through the lens of whether Detroit is making the right move at the right time. And the truth is, this decision may define how the Lions are judged next season more than any single roster move. The offense will either take a step forward with clarity and purpose, or it will reveal the cost of a miscalculation. What also stands out is that the Lions are not forced into a single identity choice. They can blend what they already do well with new ideas, but only if the coordinator is willing to collaborate rather than impose. That is a critical distinction. This offense does not need to be reinvented. It needs to be sharpened. The wrong hire would chase a system that does not fit the personnel. The right hire would amplify what already works while adding layers that defenses struggle to anticipate. That balance is exactly what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell must identify in interviews and internal discussions. There's also a human element to this decision that fans should not overlook. Players feel coaching changes